questions that lead to enlightenment. Have you ever wondered, who am I? Not the name, not this body, nor the fleeting thoughts in the mind. If all of that could change, then what am I really? Sri Ramana Maharshi, the master of self-realization, has devoted his life to answering this question, not in words, but in his own presence and deep awareness. His core teachings are simple, but they are the key to opening the door to absolute freedom. The question, who am I, is not to seek a conceptual answer, but to lead you back to your own roots. How, then, can we practice this self-inquiry to experience the self-realization that he taught? Let's delve into the teachings of Ramana Maharshi to discover the path back to the true self. The question, who am I? The key to enlightenment. Ramana Maharshi not only offers a philosophy, but he gives us the most powerful practical tool, asking ourselves the question, who am I? This is not a mere question to think or debate, but a direct path to the realization of the true self. If your mind is turned outward, you will be caught up in the world of illusion. If it turns inward, you will find the true self. Ramana Maharshi. Most of us identify ourselves with our bodies, minds, identities, memories, and thoughts. But ask yourself, am I this body? If so, when the body changes, do I change? Am I this mind? If so, when my mind changes, do I lose? Am I these feelings? If so, when joy or sadness dissipates, do I cease to exist? The truth is, the ego we cling to is just a set of concepts that change over time. But there is one thing that does not change, always exists. True self, pure awareness is within you. How to practice the question, who am I? Let this question not just be a theoretical thought, but a practice that takes you directly into the living state of enlightenment. Observe the thoughts that arise. When a thought arises, instead of running after it, ask yourself, who is thinking this? Who is aware? Trace the origin of me. When the answer appears like I am this body or I am this mind, continue to query, who knows this? What is inside me that I am aware of? Stopping in a state of pure awareness, when there are no more answers, only stillness and awareness remain. This is the state of the true self, which is self-realization. You don't need to look for external answers. Let this question take you back to yourself. Let go of the ego, return to the self. As you practice asking yourself, who am I? You will gradually realize a profound truth. The ego is just an illusion. The ego only exists when we let the mind cling to it. When we ask, who am I? The ego disappears, and only the true self remains endless, immortal. Ramana Maharshi. What does this mean? All thoughts of me, such as I am good, I am bad, I am success, I am a failure, all are illusions. The ego is like a cloud flying through the sky, but you are not a cloud, you are the still, boundless sky. When you are no longer identified with your ego, you don't have to become anyone, because your nature is inherently pure, perfect. How to let go of the ego? Not by trying to get rid of it, but by seeing through its essence. When you observe the ego without clinging to it, it naturally dissolves. Let this question free you from all the shackles of your mind. The conversation, Ramana Maharshi answers, who am I? Once, a seeker of truth came to him and asked him, He asked, "Sir, I want to be enlightened. What should I do?" Ramana Maharshi, "First, tell me, who are you?" He asked, "I am a seeker of truth." Ramana Maharshi, "Who's looking?" He asked, "It's me. It's my mind." Ramana Maharshi, "If your mind can observe itself, then who is observing?" The seeker fell into a deep silence. He couldn't find his ego anymore. It is this moment, when the mind cannot find the me, that is the door to enlightenment. The truth is, you have never been this ego. You've never been limited to any identity. You are pure existence, infinite knowing. When the question is gone, only freedom remains. Do you realize this miracle? When you actually ask, "Who am I?" and don't find any self that can cling to, that self dissolves. The personal ego is like a ghost. When you face it, it disappears. Ramana Maharshi, when the ego disintegrates, you don't need to achieve anything at all. Because in essence, you are already a pure, immobile, infinite self. So what is enlightenment? Not a special state, because any state will eventually pass. Not an experience, for every experience has a beginning and an end. Enlightenment is realizing that you don't have to be enlightened. You are already an immutable self. Stop searching. Let's go directly to ourselves right now. You are what you are looking for. Self-realization is not a state, it is your nature. When seekers first hear about enlightenment, they often think of it as a special state where there's only peace, joy, and unity with the universe. But Ramana Maharshi points out that you don't have to reach a state at all. States come and go, but the true self is eternal. Enlightenment is simply realizing that you have never been bound. Think of it this way. You dream that you are a traveler who travels everywhere in search of treasure. You have gone through so many hardships, but you have never found what you are looking for. Then one day, you wake up and realize that you have never left the house. The same is true of self-realization. When you turn inside and ask the question, "Who am I?" you will awaken from the ego dream and see that you have never left the true self. The ego does not die, but it dissolves in the light of awareness. Many people fear that if they let go of their egos, they will disappear, they will no longer be themselves. But Ramana Maharshi affirmed, the ego is like a shadow. It does not have its own entity. When the light of perception shines in, the darkness naturally dissipates. The ego is just a collection of thinking habits, memories, and illusions. When you investigate it with the question, "Who am I?" you will find that it has no fixed entity. It's like a dream, it only exists as long as you believe in it. But if the ego disappears, who will live this life? Imagine a wave in the ocean may think it is a separate individual. But when he realized that it was water, he was no longer afraid. So do you. You are not a small ego trying to find liberation. You are the eternal true self. You don't lose, you just dissolve into your true nature. Ramana Maharshi points out the unreal self. On another occasion, a pilgrim came and asked him. He asked, "Sir, if you keep asking, 'Who am I?' and you can't find the answer, what will happen?" Ramana Maharshi, what happens when you try to find a snake in the dark but realize it's just a rope? He asked, you will not be afraid anymore. Ramana Maharshi, that's right. The ego is the same. It's just an illusion. When you query it, you will see that it never really existed. When you ask yourself, who am I? You are illuminating where the ego is hiding. And when the light shines in, the darkness naturally dissipates. Enlightenment doesn't need time, just realize it now. One of the mind's greatest illusions is that enlightenment is something that happens in the future. We often think, I need years of meditation to achieve it. I'm not ready, I still have too many delusions. Maybe one day I'll find it. But Ramana Maharshi affirmed, only now. If you don't recognize the true self now, there won't be a someday for you. You can wait forever, or you can realize now. When you really become silent, not trying to seek or grasp anything, the truth reveals itself. You don't need to go anywhere. Enlightenment is here. How to bring this wisdom to life? You may be wondering, if I'm not my personal ego, then how should I live this life? Ramana Maharshi replied with absolute simplicity. Live like a river. It doesn't try to flow. It has no plan. It's simply water moving. Let your life flow naturally without being bound by personal identity. Live with the awareness that you are the true self, no need to cling to anything. It's not I'm living this life, it's this life is going on in me. Why don't we recognize the true self now? If the true self has always existed, if enlightenment is not something to be attained, but only realization, then why do most of us still not see this? Ramana Maharshi points out a simple but profound truth. You don't realize the true self, not because it's too far-fetched, but because you're being obscured by false notions of yourself. We do not see the true self because we are identified with the self, with this identity, thoughts, feelings, memories, and even the body. Like the sky covered by clouds, the light of the true self is always shining, but the mind is busy with layers of delusions obscuring it. Enlightenment is not about attaining anything, but about removing things that don't belong to you. The biggest mistake seekers make setting enlightenment as a goal. When you see enlightenment as a goal to achieve, you have inadvertently created a distance between you and the truth. You are looking for something in the future when the truth can only be realized right now. Ramana Maharshi says, if you believe you're not enlightened, you're going to keep looking. But if you stop looking, you will find that you have never left the true self. Enlightenment is not something that will happen, but something that has always existed. Let go of the search. When you stop searching, the truth reveals itself. You are not the ego, a big event in the mind. There is a moment in the inner journey when you really see that the self is not real. This is a big turning point. Normally, you think of me as the center of everything. But when you query, who am I? You will see that the ego has no fixed entity at all. It's like pulling the veil, and there's no one behind it. There is only pure awareness. Ramana Maharshi described the moment. You look for the ego, but when you look at it, you can't find it. And when you don't find it, you will recognize the true self. Enlightenment does not come from changing oneself, but from seeing that there is no single self at all. When the ego dissolves, life becomes a natural flow. When you realize that you are not your personal self, you are no longer clinging to identity, possessions, or stories about yourself. Life becomes as free as flowing water. There is no one left to protect, nothing to achieve, only absolute security. You are no longer an individual struggling with life. You are the essence of everything. Ramana Maharshi says, "Live like the sky, not holding, not clinging, simply being." You don't need to control your life. When you let go, everything goes on its own perfectly. You are already enlightened, just realize. You don't have to become someone to be enlightened. You're already there. Just as the waves have always been water, you have always been the true self. Ramana Maharshi says, "When you let go of everything that doesn't belong to you, the only thing left is the truth. There is nothing left to achieve. There is nothing left to be. There is only silence, clarity, and absolute freedom left. Let everything melt away. Let the question, 'Who am I?' lead you back to yourself. Stop searching. Stop clinging. Simply be present in this moment. The last key, simply recognize and let go. When you ask, 'Who am I?' you don't have to try to find the answer. Just observe. Just let go of all ideas. Just realize that you're already what you've been looking for. Ramana Maharshi says, "Stop clinging to any idea of me." When you are no longer clinging, the only thing left is the true self. Lessons from the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. You are not the body or the mind, you are pure cognition. Asking yourself, "Who am I?" is not to find the answer, but to realize that the self is an illusion. When the ego dissipates, only the true self remains, boundless freedom. There is no path to enlightenment, for you are inherently enlightened. Epilogue: return to inner tranquility. Silence is the ultimate truth. When the mind comes to a complete stop, only self-realization remains. Ramana Maharshi: you don't have to run after anything anymore. Everything you search for is already in you. Let the question, "Who am I?" take you back to your true nature, infinite, immortal, absolute freedom. Have you ever wondered, "Who am I?" Feel free to share your thoughts below. If you found this video helpful, like, share, and subscribe to spread the light of enlightenment together.